Hannah. I'm a tutor at Sky Academy, and we are looking at the topic of statistical analysis within the Year 11 standard course. And we're looking at classifying and representing data, which comes under MS S1. So in this video, we're going to have a look at histograms and cumulative frequency. So firstly, we're going to talk about frequency histograms and frequency polygons, then do an example of this, and then we're going to do an example of a cumulative frequency histogram. So firstly, we're going to talk about the frequency histogram, and then we'll have a look at the frequency polygon. So the frequency histogram is constructed using the equal intervals or scores or classes on the horizontal x-axis. So we have the intervals, so the class intervals, or scores or classes, class center, on the horizontal x-axis. And we graph this against the frequency of these interval scores or classes. So depending on how many times this occurs will depend on what the frequency is. And the frequency will always go on the y or vertical axis. So if we have a look here, a score of 2 has a frequency of 2, which is represented by this rectangle here. So a frequency histogram will be created using boxes or rectangles, which we can see in the orange rectangles here. So how do we know where to put our rectangles? Well, on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, if we are plotting for the score of 2, you have a look at the neighboring scores. So the next score on the left is 1 and the score on the right is 3. And if we are plotting for 2, you draw a line at 2 and draw a line at 1, and then you find the median or the halfway point between those two. You can just draw it in by eye. So they thought that the halfway between 1 and 2 was there, and then halfway between 2 and 3 would be there. And that would be the parameter or the width of your box on the horizontal axis. And then to see how tall or long your box would be is depending on the frequency. So if it had a frequency of 3, your box would go up to here. But because our box only had a frequency of 2, it went from here up to here, across and down. And so that's our box there, colored in. So you just look and you go halfway over the 2 towards the right and halfway over the 2 towards the left, or halfway between 1 and 2 and halfway between 2 and 3. And that's the width of your box. So that's a frequency histogram. When we're looking at a frequency polygon, it's just a line graph constructed by joining the top right-hand corner of the rectangles of the frequency histogram. Top right-hand corner. So it's like connect the dots. You draw dots onto the top right-hand corners of each of your boxes on your frequency histogram, and then you connect the dots. So you go from here to here, from here to here, here to here, here to here, and then down to 6. And so that would be your frequency polygon, and that's how you construct it, by going to the top right-hand corner of your frequency histogram. So you can connect the two, and you can draw something that looks like this, the frequency polygon on top of your frequency histogram. Now, another thing to be aware of is that they might call it a frequency ogive or an ogive, however you want to pronounce it. So a frequency polygon and an ogive are just the same thing, just a different word to describe it. So now we know what a frequency histogram is and a frequency polygon. Let's have a look at doing an example. So here we have the weights of 25 students recorded and displayed in a group frequency table, and we have been asked to construct a group frequency histogram. So remember, histograms are the one with the boxes on it. So that's what we're going to do. So our first step would be to get a number plane up and label it with your x-axis and your y-axis. So I'm going to draw my number plane here, and my x-axis is always my horizontal axis here, and my y is my vertical axis. And now I can label them. So this one, we can do equal class scores, class centers, or class intervals. And so I'm going to do the class interval for my x-axis. And on my y-axis, if you remember, the y-axis is always the frequency. And in this case, the frequency is the number of students who weigh in that class. Because the context of this grouped frequency histogram is the weight of 25 students, this is saying that 5 students weighed between 40 to 49. 7 students weighed between 50 to 59. So that's the context that we're in. So that's why I put frequency, and this should actually say the number of students, number of students who had a particular weight, and the class would be the weight. So the frequency is always the amount of something. So this is the amount of people, the amount of students who weighed this much on the x-axis. So now we have our number plane labeled, we can now find a scale for our number plane. So I'm going to do the scale for the x-axis first, and we're doing our class on the x-axis. So our class is here. So I've got to do 30 to 39, then 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80 to 89. So I'm just going to write that in quickly. And then we can do our y-axis scale, which is our frequency, or the number of students who weigh this much. We have from 0 to 9. So I'm just going to go up by 2s to 10. That's going to be my scale. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So now we've got our scales on our y and x axis. We can now draw the boxes. So I'm going to do that in pink so we can see a different color. So we're going from 30 to 39, and we have a frequency of 0. So we can just ignore that and we don't have to draw anything for it, because our 0 would be at the origin here. And if I was to draw 0 for 30 to 39, you just don't have to draw anything. Because if I draw something, it would take me up to 1. So we don't draw anything for 0. So we've done this one. 40 to 49 was a frequency of 5. So I'm going to go halfway towards my neighbor on either side. And then I'm going to go up to 5, which might be halfway between 6 and 4. So it would be about there. And now I've got my outline of where my box is going to go. I'm going to draw the box on. And that would be the frequency, or 5 numbers of students. 5 students would weigh between 40 to 49. So now we're going to do the same, but for 50 to 59. So we've already got our halfway marker there. So I just have to draw my halfway marker in here. And we're going up to a frequency of 7. So 7 would be halfway between 6 and 8. So it might be about there. There. So now I'm going to connect the dots to make my box. This is just how I draw my boxes on. You might have a different method to drawing your boxes, and that's fine. So now we can do 60 to 69, which had a frequency of 9. So I go halfway, then I go up to a frequency of about here for 9. And I can draw my box on. Now I have a 70 to 79 with a frequency of 4. So 4 is here, which would be about, say, there. And I need to go halfway across and draw my box on. And then I have my last one, 80 to 89, which also had a frequency of 0, so I don't have to draw it on. So that would be my grouped frequency histogram for this question, where I'm measuring the number of students who had a particular weight. So the number or the frequency went on the y-axis and the weight went on the x-axis, and I connected my boxes together. So now we know what a grouped frequency histogram is. If I was to draw on my ogive or polygon for this example, I would just go towards the top right-hand corner of each of my boxes. So as you can see in yellow. So now we can have a go at doing the next question. The next question is a cumulative frequency histogram, which works the same way as a frequency histogram, except that instead of measuring your frequency on the y-axis, you're going to measure your cumulative frequency on the y-axis. So our first step would be to draw our number plane and label it. So that's what I'm going to do here. So here's going to be my y-axis and here is going to be my x-axis. And I need to label them, so that's going to be y-axis and x-axis. On my x-axis, I can choose whether I want to do my class, my school, or my class center. For this one, I think I'm just going to do my class center because they are equally spaced, and that's what you have to worry about. You have to make sure that they are equally spaced on your x-axis. So I'm going to do 34.5 to 44.5 to 54.5 to 64.5 to 74.5 to 84.5. So that'd be 44.5, 54.5, 64.5, 74.5, and then 84.5. And this is going to be my class center. Now on my y-axis, I have to put in the cumulative frequency, which goes from 0 to 25. So this is going to be 25 up here, 20, 15, 10, and 5. 20, 15, 10, and 5. So that is my number plane drawn and labeled. And number 2, I can draw on my boxes. So we can go ahead and do that. I'm going to do it in a different color. So for my class center of 34.5, I had a frequency of 0. For my class center of 44.5, I had a cumulative frequency of 5. So 44.5, I'm going to go from halfway up about here to 5, which was about there, halfway there, and join them up. Whoops. So that is my 30 to 39 done, because we had a 0, so we don't have to draw it on. Then 40 to 49 done. Now we have to do 50 to 59, or 54.5, which had a cumulative frequency of 12. So 12 might be, let's say, about here. So I can draw that on. And that is 12 done. So now we had 60 to 69, or 64.5, which had a cumulative frequency of 21. So 21, I'm going to say, might be about here. And we want to go to halfway to our neighbor, and up about to there. And now I'm going to draw my box on. So this process is a very long and tedious process, but it is how we draw our graphs. It's just the way that we have to do it. But if you were doing a question for this one, you would probably get lots of marks for this one. It might be worth 3 marks or so. So it's not like it's only worth 1 mark, this question. It is probably worth more than 1, roughly 3 or 4. Whoops. For 74.5, I did a frequency of 4, but we are doing the cumulative frequency, so it should actually be a frequency of 25. And we can connect those boxes. And finally, the last one, 84.5, also has a frequency of 25. So we can just connect the top like that. So that is our cumulative frequency histogram part done. But we've been asked to include an ogive. So I'm going to do that in yellow like I did on the previous one. And we're going to go from the top right-hand corners to, from the bottom left-hand corner, sorry, to the top right-hand corner. When you get to something that is flat like this, you can just draw it straight across the top. So that would be our ogive on our graph. They're very easy to draw on. It's just from, you just got to know what it is. It's just from the bottom left hand to the top right hand. And that is how you draw a cumulative frequency histogram. It's just the same as a frequency histogram, except on your y-axis is your cumulative frequency. And that's how you include an ogive, or a frequency polygon, onto your cumulative frequency histogram. You go from the bottom left hand to the top right hand corner of each box, and just connect them all together.